And, perhaps most significantly, the proliferation of the distinctly Eastern and occult notion that God is an impersonal force that lives in everything and everyone, so that values and morality are relative to the individual,
I will live by my own policies.
and therefore, with no absolute standard of righteousness, there can be no ultimate judgment, no heaven or hell.
Imagine there's no heaven. It's easy if you try. No hell below us. Above us only sky.
John Lennon's most famous song is among the few truly universal and instantly recognizable anthems that rock has produced.
John Lennon recorded Imagine on a Thursday.
The only song that has been broadcast to most of the world via the United Nations, and in perhaps the most surreal performance of all, the closing ceremony of the 1996 Summer Olympics. Not only is the song fundamentally communistic, not only does it hold forth the unattainable and ultimately occult notion of a man-made utopia, but by denying the existence of heaven, hell, and finally even God, Lennon, and apparently much of the world, seeks to deny the one thing that holds tyrants in check and that guarantees individual human freedom and dignity. What Lennon has, quote, imagined would be nothing less than hell on earth. We could spend days examining the vast panorama of occult thought and practice that has been mainstreamed through the contemporary music culture. But let's continue Notes from the Underground by taking just a few snapshots of some of the more crucial collusions between rock and the satanic. We'll see that David Bowie was more right than probably he ever imagined when he stated, "Rock has always been the devil's music. I believe that it's dangerous. It could well bring about a very evil feeling in the West, a dark era. I feel that we're only heralding something even darker than ourselves." It's been well said that a person is known by the company he or she keeps. Well, in the world of rock and roll, there's one guy who pops up so often, you'd think he'd invented the backbeat. The Beatles featured him, along with Aldous Huxley and 4 Hindu masters, on the cover of their Sgt. Pepper's album. The photo montage was made up of what they called people we like and admire, and our heroes. Their choice was a significant one. Aleister Crowley is generally considered to be the most important and influential occultist of the 20th century. Clever, well-educated, and a prolific writer, Crowley was a walking encyclopedia of occult thought and practice. Dubbed the wickedest man in the world by the British press, Crowley preferred his own pseudonym, the Great Beast 666. In August of 1914, the World magazine published an account of some of the semi-public ceremonies Crowley held in London. Journalist Harry Kemp attended one such ritual and noted, "Then came the slow, monotonous chant of the high priest. There is no good, evil is good. All hail, Prince of the world, to whom even God himself has given dominion." Kemp continued, sounding for all the world like he was describing any number of contemporary rock concerts. Men and women danced about, leaping and swaying to the whining of infernal and discordant music. They sang obscene words. Women tore their bodices, some partially disrobed. One fair worshiper, seizing upon the high priest's dagger, wounded herself in the breasts. At this, all seemed to go madder than ever. Such was Crowley's ministry at the age of 39. By the time he died 33 years later, fearful, sobbing, and with the last words, "I am perplexed," upon his lips, his dark legacy had reached sufficient critical mass to almost single-handedly, in the words of occult writer Robert Anton Wilson, spark a worldwide revival of paganism.
Well, in 1918, Crowley took a great magical oath, which was a serious thing for Crowley. And he took an oath that he would surrender all of his magical powers that he had achieved until that date to concentrate his energy single-pointedly on the one task of destroying Christianity and reviving paganism. And I think if you look around the world, it's pretty obvious that Crowley has been a remarkable success. The paganism has made a big comeback in an organized way. Neo-pagan groups, and in an unorganized way, our whole society has become more pagan.
I'll tell you, when I was a kid, I read Robert Anton Wilson and all this shit, and here we are, we're standing here, we're talking about this shit, and it's real. If you do these things that you're told by Aleister Crowley, if you actually do what they say, things happen. Things occur exactly as it's described, and we can all do it.
In 1971, Timothy Leary had an epiphany during a tarot reading that utilized a set of cards designed by Crowley. His revelation? That he was Crowley reborn and was to complete the work Crowley began, preparing humanity for cosmic consciousness. Leary acknowledged this powerful connection with the great beast in a letter to Wilson, observing that the coincidences, synchronicities between my life and his are embarrassing. From this connection flowed frequent references to Crowley, his philosophy, and their common destinies in Leary's writings and speech.
Well, I've been an admirer of Aleister Crowley. I think that I'm carrying on much of the work that he started over 100 years ago, and I think the 60s themselves. You know, Crowley said he was in favor of finding your own self and do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law under love. It was a very powerful statement. I'm sorry he isn't around now to appreciate the glories that he started.
The phrase, "do what thou wilt," was taken from the Book of the Law, Crowley's most renowned work and one whose composition is worth understanding in the context of our study. While visiting Egypt in 1904, Crowley's first wife, Rose, began going into spontaneous trances, muttering things like, "They are waiting for you," and "He who was waiting was Horus." Intrigued, Crowley and Rose went to visit the Cairo Museum. From a distance, she spied a glass case and exclaimed, there he is." Upon inspection, the case did contain an image of Horus painted on a wooden stele, but what particularly stunned Crowley was its exhibit number, 666, his number, the number of the beast. Convinced now that something supernatural was happening, Crowley went back to his hotel and performed a ritual, summoning this higher power. Over 3 successive days, beginning on April 8th, the book was channeled through Crowley while in a trance. And the content of this revelation? "I am the snake that giveth knowledge," the Spirit said. "To worship me take wine and strange drugs, whereof I will tell my prophet." Falling on precisely the wrong side of the Bible's account concerning the fall of man and Satan's role, this snake spirit begins the revelation by telling man that he is a god, that reality is essentially an illusion, sin a myth, and that ethically There's no greater commandment than the law of Thelema, Greek for will, as famously stated in the 40th verse of chapter 1.
Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law.
We do what we want to do when we want to do it.
Well, today that same law has been written, spoken, or sung about by more contemporary artists than even Robert Anton Wilson would have imagined. John Lennon, Jim Morrison, the Black Crowes' Chris Robinson, and Marilyn Manson have all trotted it out in one form or another as words to live by. Harry Smith inserted it into the original handbook that came with his renowned Anthology of American Folk Music. It shows up in songs by Mudvayne, David Bowie, The Only Ones, The Electric Hellfire Club, Alphaville, Throbbing Gristle, Numb, Ancient Ceremony, Eddie and the Hot Rods, Death SS, Theater of Tragedy, Cult Disciples, Therion, Psychic TV, Celtic Frost, Bruce Dickinson, Moonspell, Graham Bond, Sepultura, Edge of Sanity, The Lords of the New Church, and Marilyn Manson, among others. The band 311 not only uses Crowley's Law as a lyric, the bass player had it tattooed on his leg, as well as Crowley's Tree of Life design on his back. Punk band Unwritten Law had Crowley's Law written on their concert t-shirts.
I'm closer to the golden dawn, immersed in Crowley's uniform of imagery.
Among rock artists who have studied and embraced aspects of Crowley's magical system, Daryl Hall, Sting, Coil, and Killing Joke, among many others, could relate at some point in their careers to Bowie's comment, "My overriding interest was in Kabbalah and Crowleyism, the whole dark and rather fearsome netherworld of the wrong side of the brain." Director Donald Cammell, the man behind the underground film Performance, used to enjoy telling friends that, as a child, he would sometimes be bounced on the knee of the wickedest man in the world. Significantly, the film starred the Stones' Mick Jagger and Anita Pallenberg, herself a devoted occultist, and explored nihilism and insanity through the metaphor of rock and roll.
The only performance that makes it, that really makes it, that makes it all the way, is the one that achieves madness, right?
Cammell also played the role of Osiris in Lucifer Rising, the film by another Crowley devotee, Kenneth Anger. Anger directed and produced a number of occult films that utilized the talents of rockers Marian Faithfull, Mick Jagger, Jimmy Page, and Bobby Beausoleil, another Crowleyite who was later convicted of murder in relation to the Manson cult. And Led Zeppelin's Jimmy Page's fascination with the great beast is so notorious, it rates its own link on a website dedicated to Crowleyana. From studying magic as an adolescent, purchasing Crowley's old house, buying an occult bookstore and naming it after a periodical Crowley published, inscribing Do What Thou Wilt onto the runoff vinyl for the first pressing of Led Zeppelin III, even acting out rituals on stage that look an awful lot like those described by the Beast in his, quote, instructions to his magical order. Page meant it when he said, "I've employed his system in my own day-to-day life.